Okay, so this is live. It's gonna pop up over here on the LinkedIn. See, I would really like to know how to create an API, like a backend API that you can then just like make calls to from
Okay,
your
so with
component.
Remix right now, maybe your question is more like, what if we do have a separate backend that we want to make calls to? Like, where do we make the fetch call? Where does that happen? I guess.
Um, okay, well we're live first off. We're all the way through.
Oh,
Hello everybody. We're
hello
jumping into
everyone.
kind of the middle of a thought here. Um, so
So, do you want to lay
yeah,
out for anyone
welcome to
watching what?
Upskill and Chill. Yeah, so jumping just like right into the middle of a thought stream. Um, I was just asking Courtney, talking to him about. I was looking into some authentication material and frameworks and stuff, or libraries, if you will, inside the Remix ecosystem, and working with those a bit today to try and get a handle on how things work. I was dipping over into the side of the blockchain side of trying to use sign in with Ethereum and VM and Rainbow Kit and whatnot and then try to funnel that authentication through an authentication library called Remix Auth, which it sounds like we might be working with today. Um, I wasn't. There's still more work to be done there, and I came away from that work with a question. I was just asking Courtney, and this is something I didn't get a chance to start looking into or researching. But Remix is supposed to be a full stack framework, and I don't know. Maybe my mental model here is wrong or needs to be adjusted as well. I'm totally open to that idea. But in my mind, I'm thinking about you have a front end and a back end. They're separated from each other. The front end typically will make fetch calls, using Axios library or the fetch API, and then you'll hit a backend endpoint with a method and maybe pass it some data or something. It'll do something in return to the front end, and then yada yada. That's classic flow. And I'm trying to think about how we do that within Remix. Um, Obviously, we have that flow set up when we're using a form and submitting a form, because we were doing that last time, right? We set up an action that was receiving a request from a form submission on our front end, and then that action was determining if it was a post or delete or whatever request, and then pulling in a specific. I think actually get and post is what we had here, or maybe no, we have delete and post. Sorry, and then using an action that's defined in another file to do that and return and whatnot. But that's all being triggered through a form submission. I'm wondering if I like the situation I guess I'm thinking is like if I want to click a button in the UI and have that trigger a request. Wow, that was loud.
Sorry.
If I click a button and have that trigger some sort of a fetch call to an API endpoint, how does that flow work? Where is that? How is that API defined within the Remix framework? How do we communicate with it? Is that like, would that button just be a submit button inside of a form hitting an action, and we can name our actions, and then the action is going to reach out to a particular file? Like, are the actions the endpoints? Is that where this model? I I'm curious. I haven't
Yeah,
dug
I
into
was
it.
doing a little digging around while you were
Saying all
explaining,
those words.
saying so many words. No, and here, this is what I've found thus far from the Remix's own documentation. Um, Now I haven't had a chance to like fully dig into this,
Hmm.
but it sounds like from my cursory reading that we don't need the concept of routes with Remix in the same way that we might with like Next or something like that. And what they're saying is that each route itself, so like for us, we have our to do page that like slash to do, that's our route. It acts as both the API and the UI for that route. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
So it isn't. I think if I'm understanding correctly, it is exactly what we've been doing so far, which is our loader is almost like the API, and our action is like a set of server actions, I think.
Mm.
And so we're able to. And actually, I'm not. I shouldn't say that about actions. I'm not sure if that's the correct way to describe it. But right now, we are performing actions similar to server actions
Hmm.
within the action function
Yeah.
on several of our components. Um,
So I think at the end of our last episode, it was just kind of dawning on me that I had to kind of like clarify my understanding of front end routing and the back end API routes, and
right.
they're really really living together here. Like your routes, if we're in in our app, um, wait, is this the right?
Yeah.
Oh,
See, we can
this is the
create.
next project. Oops, I'm in the wrong place.
Yeah, it looks very different, doesn't it?
Uh,
We can actually create. It looks like general purpose resource routes. They call it. So this is like if we have a route. Let's just say we wanted to have like slash API slash to do.
hmm.
We could have a route that doesn't have any UI attached to it, just a loader. And it looks like this is how we would be able to potentially um, like hit the route and get whatever, or hit it as an endpoint, basically. Um,
Okay, I was
so I'm
wondering.
seeing there's
Yeah.
a handful of use cases that they describe, like uh, so you have like your web app, but you might want to have a corresponding mobile app, and so it would these resource routes would act as your API for the mobile
Hmm.
app, which would not have access to all of this remix magic necessarily. Um,
Okay.
there's a bunch of things. Dynamically generating social images for blog posts or other pages. Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. So
Also
I think.
says that
Oh, go ahead.
if you
Go ahead.
call, yeah, if you call, if a route is not called by Remix UI, like link or use fetcher, and does not export a default component, it is now a general purpose resource route. If called with get, the loader's response is returned. If called with post, put, patch, or delete, the action's response is returned.
Oh, okay. 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 Interesting. Okay. So,
I'm still kind of curious where we're supposed to make fetch calls within a component in what do you call it, in Remix. But if
well,
I'm understanding
uh,
correctly, I suppose that's it's probably in the loader or in the action. I think.
yeah, with the hmm, man, I bet that somebody who's more familiar with the framework would be able to lay this out like really well. But I have so many questions, or just like there's this the contradicting idea because you're saying like, oh, where do we fetch things? And my first thought is like, okay, well, you have a component route, you have the component, you hit a button, and that's gonna hit the action of that route. But it doesn't have to hit the action of the route you're on. When you do, maybe it's not a submit. Well, I guess when you do a submit, you can specify the target, right, or the action on the form. The target, it was it target or was it action? I can't
See.
remember now. Um, but that when you do that, you're choosing which, or is it you can name your actions? Man, I need to be in Remix a bit more often than once a week. I think that's what I'm running into here. I think. Um,
Well, how did we do this? So let's look at our task, for instance. We had to define our fetcher, and then where does the fetcher get used? Oh, it's fetcher.form. Yeah,
yep.
so when this form is submitted, it's automatically hitting. that fetcher. Okay.
Mm.
And then remind me, why does it hit? Why does this fetcher hit our to-do route? I forgot how that works.
Oh, well, because form
It bubbles
submissions,
up
the
to the
actions
nearest.
bubbles up to the nearest
Yeah. Okay.
to the
Okay. Okay.
nearest the nearest action. So the task is inside the to-do form. To-do form is inside of to-do route, and then that's where action is defined. It goes to the nearest one, but you can define, like, you can specify where you want your form to go. Let's see.
And it's the same for on our to-do form when we're creating a new to-do item. It's the same thing, right? It's bubbling up to the actual to-do. Oh, excuse me.
Yes. Yep.
To the actual do
Yep.
to-do route, which has all of our actions defined there. Okay.
Right.
Because we did the method. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean. So what's a use case where we would actually
So
want to, for a component,
here.
we'd actually want to load? I guess you wouldn't have access to the loader in, say,
Oh, oh,
go ahead.
all right. I'm just finish your thought out. Sorry, I'm
Oh,
being.
yeah, yeah. I was trying to think of like what's a scenario where we have to work outside of like the action or loader. But actions and loaders only exist within routes in Remix, right? So it's like you actually have to have like the to do route or something like that. But we have a couple components here, like task and to do form, that there are no loaders or actions tied specifically to those components. We're calling we're calling those actions from the to do route, but inside of other components, but through forms also, as you were pointing out earlier. I was just trying to think like when would we actually need to not use a form, but still call one of these one of these methods. And my thought was maybe we would have a component. This is pretty theoretical at this point, but like I don't know. Um, you could see a world where like the to do form has the task list on it, and so how do we get the list of tasks inside a non route component? Um, but I
Hmm.
think you just call a GET request. I think you would try to fetch from that route. Fetch, GET fetch. What am I trying to say? Honestly, that's interesting. How does that work?
So the use case in my case, and this totally open to the idea that I'm just trying to architect the auth stuff with the blockchain elements and everything incorrectly so far, because there's several involved libraries there, and I still don't quite know how they're all supposed to fit together. Um, but in my case, there is Rainbow Kit is the wallet provider that wraps the app. And then to use sign in with Ethereum through the Rainbow Kit provider and through their UI, they also have another provider for sign in with Ethereum, like authentication. Uh, because I want to use Remix instead of Next and Next Auth, which they have, it's a bit more streamlined there. You have to do some custom build for that provider, for the authentication provider inside of the Rainbow Kit UI ecosystem.
Mm,
And that provider is supposed to be given an authentication adapter is what it's called, and they have an outline
okay.
for how it's built. And in that authentication adapter, it builds and returns an object with, let me look at it here, um, with specific functions on it that is then going to be used inside, like with internally inside of that provider, inside of Rainbow Kit when it's doing different things. So you need to provide a get nonce function, a create message function, a verify function, and a sign out function inside of this adapter. And
Mm,
then,
okay.
so the create message one is kind of, that's fine. That's created like on its own. In their examples here, this is kind of where this idea is coming from in my mind. And the one I'm most concerned with, I'll just talk about this one. So verify. This is where um, the after the user has signed the message, has clicked sign message, then we have to verify that that signature is valid. Or maybe they have to verify this for authentication purposes. Anyways, so they're going to verify that the message and the signature matches the auth. That I'm still a little fuzzy on how that. I don't know exactly how that all works internally, but in this verify function that's supposed to be provided within this adapter, they are making a fetch call to, and this is just like placeholder, but they have like API/verify. So this is supposed to be reaching out to a backend that is going to verify the signature by passing some of the data to it, and then sending back a true or false based on if the signature was successfully verified or not. So I'm trying to figure out in that flow, in in our backend within the remix, how do I within this authentication adapter do like a fetch call to an endpoint to do some work in the back end? And I thought I had
Okay,
kind of figured
check
it out. Yeah, what's up?
check this out. I'll let me show you what I've got. I think I might have the answer.
Oh, that would be
Uh,
amazing.
so wrong thing to show at the moment. Hold on. What I did is just I tested something out. I created an API route and then put to do in here,
Okay.
or it's really like /API/to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, this is what we have so far for our loader in the actual to do route. So I just imported this whole statement into this now API to do
Okay.
route. No UI or anything available, right?
Right.
And then when I navigated to that in the URL, since I don't need any body or anything to submit this request, I was actually able to get our one task that's in the
Oh.
library. So my thought is that that's our API endpoint now. Like the way that I think the way we do what you're saying is we build. It would probably be an action in this section, or wherever we actually want this to be.
Yep.
Um, we have our to do route. This is where we put, for instance, like our create action or create route, and this is now where. I mean, I suppose we'd actually just use similar syntax to this, right?
Well, we were talking
Because
about this last week, how we had like two options in front of us. What we ended up doing here was hitting the action, checking the method, and then having an externally defined function that would be used here, right? Create task and delete task. Or the other thing that we didn't do, which is what we're now looking at, is create these resource endpoints, API dot to do, and then inside of there, I mean, we could do like API dot to do dot create task, and then that would just be
mm,
the
mm.
endpoint that we would hit, and that would just be that create task function, right? I mean,
Like, yeah,
we
we
could
could just
test
put
that.
that. You're right, and we wouldn't have to have this logic for like filtering our request by method. Um, but I think that's more or less what you're looking for.
I think
Like
so.
those become our endpoints essentially that we're hitting.
Yeah, and it said that a get request going to API dot to do will trigger the loader, and then
That's
the
right.
other methods will trigger the action.
Yeah, this way we can create more targeted logic because there might be other reasons that we would have a loader on this page, and we don't necessarily want to run all of that logic every time we hit like the API version of this route. We will probably want to hone like what is it we actually want when we hit API/to do or API/to do/load tasks, create task, all that kind of thing.
So how in this component would we hit API dot to do to load in all our tasks and put it in in the way we want? Like if we didn't have this loader, or would we make that call in the loader instead? So we're just like adding one layer of abstraction.
Let's see. I'm kind of
How,
curious how that works.
how do we hit it?
I know we could do this. I think, and actually don't need tasks now, do I? So how would we do this? We would fetch HTTP. Oh my gosh, I'm totally forgetting. What is this
Yeah,
actual route?
it's a weird 5173.
Right, sorry, 5173.
Why?
In some ways, easy to remember. Localhost colon. Okay, good. Then slash to do. Oh, slash API slash to do. Actually, um, and honestly, I probably shouldn't do it like this. Let's do this. We'll actually set tasks equal to this. Oh, two awaits. Um, actually, we'll call this results. I haven't done this in Remix, so I'm not even sure if this is the right way to formulate this. Tasks equals await result.json, and then tasks in here.
Maybe.
What do we think of that? I'm curious if this even works. Let's put a
Yeah,
console log in here.
I think that's wise.
Thank you. Perimeter tasks implicitly has any. Do we not have a task? Oh, I forgot to do. You gotta type correctly. Otherwise, what happens? TypeScript gets mad at you. Okay. I imagine TypeScript is like Donald Duck. Just
I think you've mentioned that before.
unexpected return. Do I just need to read? Yeah, okay. Okay, well, it did load it. Where is the log? Is it here? No, of course not. It is.
I want to try adding a task.
Oh, yeah, we did log it though.
Huh.
Yeah, let's try adding a task.
Adding a task and see if that just kind of triggers the go around.
Test the fetch call.
This is fascinating. It's
Only me.
it's definitely a different. Wow. Okay.
Granted,
Interesting.
that was an action. So the real question is, can we do all this inside of? I mean, it definitely seems like we can, but
Yeah.
inside of this API to do. Yeah, I mean, we did just successfully make this fetch call, and I can tell it's not just a cached result because I got the correct result in the log here, and here in fact is the new fetch call because we were using inside of where's task. Inside of task, we're using the fetcher form, which does make another fetch request on submit, right? So we submit it, it handles its business, and then no, actually we're not using the fetcher form, are we? This is happening inside of a form
Yep.
in because we did not delete. We are submitting. It seems like it. I don't think the caching works the same as next, so I'm actually not too worried about getting cached results as opposed to getting a fresh fetch. But anyway, I know it's fresh because we just added this.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. Okay. So that would be in my mind. Then we in the loader. In that loader for the fetch request, that would be abstracted into like a function so that we can replace, the HTTP localhost yada yada with an API base or URL base, and then append the end. And okay, but this does work, and then a little bit of finagling to make it really flexible. Interesting. Okay, so we can just make API endpoints inside the routes.
Yeah, that feels pretty
Okay.
good. That
Hmm.
actually feels like it works.
Hmm.
So now the
Okay.
question is, here do we do we even bother doing this? Is this particular function worth abstracting into its own route?
I don't think so.
This feels like an extra step that we don't need.
Yeah, I think for this app, this is unnecessary, and the loader does what it needs to do. It brings in the stuff and makes it available. Um,
We'll keep
but
this though. There
that
might be other other
that
ways that
def
we want to actually. Oh, go. I'm sorry.
no that just definitely that does help to answer my question, and now I'll be curious to see if that helps to figure out some of the other things I was messing around with or not. We'll find out. Interesting. Okay. So then so that's a loader making the fetch request to an API endpoint that we're defining within the routes. And then but you could just do that in any function and then call that function. So you can have a front end component has a button. The button has a handler. Inside the handler, you'll have an async function that's going to make a fetch request to your API endpoint, just like you did there, awaits the response, and then does something with it.
I think
Okay.
that's right.
Okay. Okay. Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Interesting. All right. Well, that definitely helps to answer that question. I'll have to my use case is just so at the moment convoluted. It's probably user error on my part, maybe overcomplicating it or not understanding it fully enough. But that will hopefully help in that direction. Cool. Well, that's something else learned that I think we'll definitely want to have in our back pocket for the future.
So something I'm thinking about now, now that we bring this up. Hmm.
Oh, the thing that I was going to say was that
What if? Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Do you
we
think?
a little bit ago we can on a form you can add a prop and it's the action and then it takes in the URL to submit the form data to. So we could from a form put in a URL for one of these API endpoints and send the form directly to a backend API without going through an action. It doesn't have to go to the action. Now, it's nice to be able to I think collect those things together. That's kind of the point of having the loader and the action and the component all in one file. Um, but if there is some sort of a use case for some reason, we can submit a form directly to a backend endpoint.
Yeah. And kind of coming back to something that I know you felt ambivalent about. I don't know. That might not be the right word. But this hidden input that we have to submit a delete method call. I'm
Hmm.
wondering if this new flow actually means that there's another way to do this. We don't have to actually submit a form, if you know what I mean. I think what we could do instead is so we have our icon that, when pressed, triggers a function that we define here that makes the delete call to an API route that we already have infrastructure set up for.
So you're talking
And
about
then
doing an actual like on click,
yeah,
going going old. I don't know. I don't know what's old and what's new anymore because
yeah,
Remix
I know. It's
is
we keep
designed
going
to work
around.
around on like really old original internet protocol using all the form submits and stuff. And then all the front end on click business was like the new wave, and now we're inside of Remix, but we're gonna do an on click. Yeah, it's funny. um,
Do we? Is there any
how would we
advantage
do
to?
that? Let's see.
So yeah, I mean, you want me to? I
Well,
think I can walk us
you
through
gotta
this.
ask your question first, and then
Let me do
is
this.
what's the
I think
advantage, right?
what's the advantage of using a form? I'm curious if it updates correctly. Like if we do what I'm proposing right now, um, will it actually like update the form, or are we going to get to this place where it's like we're actually deleting it, but we're
Uh,
still seeing the list of tasks? But this
it
isn't next, so
should.
it should.
Well, it should. So
Let's
the
do this.
button is going to have an on click. That button is sitting inside of the task, so we can pass the on click the ID because we should be just looping over or mapping over, right? The list of tasks to generate those tasks, and then the ID will just be there. That's classic React from the good old front end days before all this fandangled um, full stack stuff. And
Dangled.
and then that can just make a delete request, a fetch request to an endpoint, like you're talking about.
Okay, so what do I need to import? We need this. We also need create task, delete task. Right now, I don't want to worry about. Well, we'll leave the switch in. Why don't I just? Oh, where'd you go? Oh, to do. Let's import both of these actions. I guess what would be different is we'd have parameters as well, right?
Yeah.
Would it be like params?
How do we pull params into an action? Because I know you use the like. No, you do use params. Is
Is that what
that
it is? That's a
yeah,
React hook, right?
yeah, which how do we inside of a loader? It just that's a loader. Route params. I mean, we're in a loader. Is that correct, or are
React.
we doing an action? We're doing an action.
We're gonna be in an action, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see. How do I?
Do the params just come in?
You're running a Remix route that receives a request with search params. You can access them using the URL and URL search params. So, uh-huh. Oh, I just do it like that, huh? Oh, interesting. Does that work? Most curious.
Just use search params.
New URL. Okay, right, request URL. So far, so good. Okay, it doesn't like search params. Why is that? Oh, did I mean URL search params? Oh, I did mean that. No, that's not what I meant.
I think I was just looking at something that you're working on here. I'm not sure if I can. Oh goodness, where
Oh, I
URL
didn't
search
declare. Oh,
params.
silly, of course.
So
That would be why. Kids, if you're declaring a variable, you actually have to declare it.
new URL. Yeah, I'm looking at the same thing. And then you go url.searchparams.get term.
Query equals. Do they just set it equal to search params? They certainly do. I'm not going to do that. Let me log this. Let's see if this actually works. Let's pull this out for now. I don't think we need this actually. Okay. So if I'm understanding correctly, we make our call, and then out of the URL, our search params will be extracted, and we'll be able to log them here. So then I suppose I actually have to call this from somewhere.
So I'm
Well,
looking at
can I
something
actually
that
call this?
you're supposed to use after that new URL and then request.url, you get the URL. Then on the next line, they're doing a url.search params. Oh, but you're destructuring? Is that? Oh, maybe.
Yes.
Ah, oh, okay. I get it. I'm just slow. Courtney has to wait for me to catch up. So sorry.
He's just. No, you're good, buddy. Okay, so let's go back and get some data here. What is an ID that I can delete? Just need to extract a little something here. Okay, so theoretically, if I hit send here, I'm going to be deleting this task. Okay, nice. Unexpected server error. Content type was not one of multi-part. Oh, right, because we're not submitting form data. But did I get the right?
Yeah, we'll check your console log.
That's a no. Did
Hmm.
not get the search params. It's not because of this type error, is it? I felt dubious about this. I'm not sure that URLs just have search params. I feel like there's a
I
simpler
mean, I
way,
see this
probably.
pattern
Let's
here.
go back to.
URL search params are the
You
portion
do?
of the
Okay.
URL after a question mark. Other names for these are query strings, search. You can access the values by creating a URL out of the request.url. And then, yeah, new URL, request.url, and then, so the use params is going to be a hook inside of the component. But
Oh, I see.
can you,
Okay. Isn't this not something we can use? Hold on.
here,
I'm curious.
I'm going to send you the link for what I'm looking at in the docs. Oh, oops, is that not going to send the whole URL? That just sent like a weird ID. Oh, weird. Okay, that actually didn't send a, here. Try that.
Okay.
Can you use params inside of an action?
That's what I'm gonna try.
Okay. I guess in my
Let's
mind I
hold
had
on.
like any use hooks. You're going to use that inside of the UI component.
Oh, I see what you mean. Let's just see, because these are still components. These are still TSX components. I don't know if that actually matters though.
But it's running on the back
Um,
end. The action runs on the back end, and a use anything like a use hook, that's a React hook, and that's a front end hook.
and
Maybe it'll work, but I'm not. I'm
oh no,
thinking
you totally called it. Invalid hook call. Hooks can
yeah,
only be inside the body of a function component. Okay, so no use params.
yeah. Check out that link I sent you, because
Okay.
there's some code there that
All right, so URL params are the portion of the URL after a question mark. That's right. Other names for this are query string, search string, or location string. Get term. So, if I'm understanding correctly, in our case, since our route is ID, it would be get ID. Let's do this again.
yes,
So we're going
maybe
to
let's
say
try
const
that.
URL.
Yeah,
New
that
URL const
that
term equals.
term. Yeah, I think that term is supposed to be the variable in there. So we would be ID.
And it certainly does have search params dot get ID. Now, do we get the correct ID? I almost feel like I need to start submitting some form data too. But for now, forget about it. Let's see. This is not the right way to do this, almost certainly. Null is how it's coming back. In fact, let me just, we don't need all this right now. Um, yeah, we're logging null for our ID.
Okay. What does it look like again to what does it look like again when we're actually making the call, hit to this endpoint in our code?
Um, right now I'm just hitting it from Postman.
Oh, okay. And you're
We're supposed to be able to get this in our request. So actually, I'm kind of curious what happens if I just pull out the URL.
yeah, I was just
Will
gonna
I
say
see the whole URL?
what's the URL to see if we're even getting that through.
Interesting.
Okay, so it's there, but it's just appended. So we need to make it a. Do we need to turn it into a search param?
Right, because I'm not. This is part of the
Yeah, we're just
route right now.
passing
We
it.
actually
We're just
want
yeah, we're just passing it in. It needs to be a question mark
like this.
ID
I think.
equals. I think that's right. I do that so infrequently.
Uh, 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 but did not provide an action on that. So there's no way to handle the request. Okay. Um,
Can, did the path name get changed in the new URL that we just submitted? Because that path name there that's printed in the console still doesn't have like the ID or anything that you just added.
so how do we grab it from the route itself? Because we have it right here. So we just need path name. We don't need a search param. I think that's the problem. We're not
Well,
submitting a search param.
hold on. Um, you added the like the question mark ID
Right.
yada yada,
But what
right?
I'm saying is like the convention is usually that you submit like for a dynamic route, I mean, which is kind of the way we were thinking of this.
Um,
Um like we want to access this. Uh okay.
so I
So
think search params is maybe not. We want route params, not search
route
params.
params,
I think params is just that's loader. It's in a loader. I don't know if it's the same thing. For the loader, the params are just destructured from like where we have request, but that's in a
is
loader.
this what you're looking at? Oh, I see.
No, I'm
Params,
looking at data loading. Um,
loader function args. Okay, so what we really want are is it action function args? Let me find that in here. Of course, action function args. Oh, you can't find that in here? Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
these search functions, like this search function thing that I see on so many sites, surprisingly does not hit and find the things that I want it to find surprisingly often. That's search params. So I mean, route params.
Actions have the same API as loaders. The only difference is when they are called.
Okay, so then we should be able to do destructure params next to the request, if that's true.
Okay.
So if you
So
go,
is that where? Oh, I have to go back to loader.
so
So you were talking about this.
yeah,
So we
params.
could just
Yeah, it's right
destructure
there.
param.
That's
Oh,
usually
I
where,
see.
where request is, but maybe just put params right next to it, and then just console
Oh,
log that, and let's hit it.
we're not mad at that, are we? Okay, let's try that. I'm just gonna put it under ID. And okay, let's try this. Hey, there it is.
ID. Okay,
Okay,
there we go. Yeah. So it's super simple.
just these
Thanks,
questions.
Remix.
It's even easier than we
Thanks,
thought.
thanks, Remix. It's just there.
Okay, don't need any of that then. Yeah, so now
So
we don't have to do
params.id.
the hidden input.
Okay, okay,
We'll
okay.
come by it honestly. So, how would we want to actually build this out is now the question. Okay, so we don't need this. Let's switch all you back on. Now we have to get the form data. How do I get the form data? Request.form data? Like that? That seems to be what we were doing before. I
Yes,
guess
but
though,
for the delete, we're not doing a form anymore. We're just gonna do a button to hit an endpoint, right?
that's right. That's
And then
right.
we're just
So
sending the ID in the params. So this becomes really simple.
so we actually don't even need to get form data
Nope,
for the delete route.
nope.
We can just simply pass an ID, which will be a string.
We don't have
Um,
to determine task ID there at the top line.
oh,
And then
we can
ID can just
even
be, yeah,
do this
yep,
sexy syntax.
you're on it.
Oh man, I'm a big fan of that. Let's see. So, where was I? Okay. So here now we're just, I guess what would be readable would be to be like ID equals params.id.
Yep,
Let's get rid of these, clean up a little bit, and now we're just submitting ID. No?
yep.
String or undefined. Okay, right. Um,
Uh, uh, I guess, yeah, at the end there of that,
do I need?
at the top line where you're defining ID, can you do nullish coalescing and do an empty string at the end? So
I see.
question mark, empty string.
I could also just
You could,
assert, right?
I guess so. Yeah.
Is there a better way between those two? I wonder
I don't know.
because nullish coalescing itself is. I guess the strength of that would be that we could control for like if we receive an empty string, something went wrong, right?
Yeah, because
Like in our
nullish
delete.
coalescing is specifically looking for null or undefined.
That's right. Yes, yes. Does that help us? That does help us because now we could say, you know, if ID is equal to this, return something went wrong or no ID found. I
No
guess.
ID submitted or provided.
Cool. That way we have some kind of something to handle that scenario because otherwise it's going to throw an error and it'll be hard to trace. I think.
Hmm.
Okay. And then we can even, I think,
Or
so these are not
would we?
even
I think we would
actually.
want to do that actually right there even.
Well, we actually won't want this anymore because we won't want at least create task to be part of this because post will be in a different route. Post will not be in a route with an ID since we haven't created the ID yet. Uh, sorry, our post route currently is creating a task which is only going to hit API to do because there's no ID to hit.
Yeah.
It
So
gets created.
API slash to do with a post request would hit our create, right?
Right.
If it's hitting
Right.
API dot to do dot ID. Now that could be a patch.
Yeah, and we could. I mean, yeah,
It could
right.
be a
So
get as
wait.
well. It could be a get or a patch. So we want to
So
check.
maybe
We don't have to do post here, but we'd still want to check for the delete method, I think.
yeah, we just wouldn't want create task. So what we could do is just that, I guess. Why is switch not
I just take out
expression?
case. I take out the whole case post and return there those two lines because post is not
Uh,
going to come through this route in this
right.
model
Why
now.
does it not like this? Did I do something wrong with the syntax?
Expression expected.
Expression expected. What does that mean?
Uh, hmm.
Hold on. Let me. Interesting. Most interesting, Captain. Let's see. Default term. I am super confused. Oh, I know why. Ha, there it is. Silly.
Yeah, delete a little too
Let me get rid of
much.
this now.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
because
could just add to this as we
yeah,
build more out.
we could get you could have a get or a post request patch. Sorry, coming through here. Potentially.
And I'll leave this. We're not going to do anything with that data yet, but it is coming in. So now, bringing it on home. Let me get rid of these two. So now the question is, bringing it back to your original ask, how do we do this now inside of the
I,
actual delete?
yeah, I think that's super easy.
Okay, so it's an icon button. Let me refresh myself here. How do we pass
Should have an
on
on click.
click? Okay, right. And we actually need to pass it something. So will it be like
Let's
as
create a
easy
handler function.
as
We could just create a handler function right here.
okay? Oh, right. Yeah, we don't even need to import anything there. Okay.
Handle delete. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that function is going to take in an ID.
Is that right?
Are we mapping here? Oh no, we're not mapping here. That's right. The map is around this component. Or
No, because we'll be
this is
like result equals fetch. Then we hit our route, right?
we have an ID being passed into this component. Yeah, this is our task. Okay. Okay.
173 slash. I guess we actually need the ID though. I mean, we
Yeah,
don't need to
well,
pass it into the function, but yeah.
we
Should have
have an
done
ID
this.
what are the props passed into this component?
Well, I don't think we need any, right? Because we're just going to hit to do slash, and then we'll just fill it in here.
And then that's ID. Yeah, that's coming in, right?
ID.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I
Okay. Yeah.
I was just
Yeah.
trying to
You
confirm. Yep.
are you're on the money there. I have to make sure the method is clear. We're doing a delete. I don't think. Do we need anything else? There's no body
I
required.
don't think so.
Um.
Probably maybe just make it async and await it,
Oh, of course. Of course.
and then I mean you could do a try catch and error handle and all that, but I mean you don't have to. We don't have to necessarily go through that this moment either. We'll see if it's successful or not.
What do we even? Oh, gosh, now we're abstracted several levels. It's in to do actions. We return the deleted task. Okay, so I guess just for the sake of seeing what happens here, const deleted task equals await result.json and return deleted task. Yeah, okay. Then over here, handle delete.
I don't think we have
Ha
to
ha
return
ha!
anything from the handle delete, do we?
No, we don't have to. No, we don't. But I just kind of want
We
to.
could console log it to check it out, but Otherwise, that
Oh,
return
that's
is
a better idea.
that return is just going off into the ether because we're not doing anything with it.
Okay. Let's see how that goes. So I guess we can do this actually from, where did I, here it is. Let's do a good refresh. Okay, internal server error, what don't we like? Oh my god, how much have I missed? Content type was not one of, I probably need to, in here.
Application JSON, is that?
Yeah, how does
Need
that work again?
Header.
Oh, this is the wrong place to look. What am I wanted actions, library actions, method post. Well, I didn't add it here, did I? I was hoping to look at our next situation. We have delete task. Okay, well, content type was not. Where does content type go?
Oh, content type. That's the header. So
Oh,
that's
it's a
like,
header. Is that
yeah.
right? Okay.
So
Okay, cool.
if you, I mean, we're not sending content though. We're just sending it something in the URL. I mean, does it want content type application JSON? Like,
Let's
so you
try.
would put header and then, or
Is it
headers.
headers or header?
I think it's headers and then it's an object.
Yeah, I think so. Content type application slash JSON, like that. I think might need it. Let's see.
We'll find out. Try it again.
Trying again. Same thing.
Do we have to send an? Do we send a body? Do we send like an empty? Excuse me, man. Do we need to send like an empty object through as a body, as a payload?
Mm-hmm. Hold on a sec. This is not what I'm looking for. Oh, you know what? Is it telling me a specific line at all that I can investigate? No, of course not. Matter.
Does it expect form data? Are we not? If we go to that API.todo, that route file, I mean, it's looking for form data, but our request doesn't have any form data coming through. Is that const form data equal await request form data? Is that screwing things up? Can you comment that out? Because we're not using it here.
Maybe that's the problem. Let's see.
We're not passing form data, and then we're asking it to find form data, and then it's not finding any. Maybe that's a...
Is that a latent issue? Never mind. Okay.
Boom.
So now the question is, if I
UI...
refresh.
Okay.
Okay.
But
So
the UI didn't update on its own, though.
no, the UI did not update on its own. Good call on this, by the way. Um, right. I don't know if we need this anymore either.
Uh, so when we do things through actions within a route file, I think that's what ends up triggering that revalidate.
Which means,
But we're doing just a on click, and we're not. So it's not triggering a revalidation of a UI path, and so that's the action, and I think it's like the action is in that route, and we're viewing the component, the UI component from that route, and when you hit the action on a route after it's done doing anything, it revalidates that route. But we're not hitting the action on our UI route. We're hitting an action on a different route, and then it needs to revalidate a different route. Does that make
so
sense? I'm pretty sure that's the
yeah.
flow of it. Is when you hit an action in a route, it revalidates that route after the submit in the action. Yeah, but the action that we're calling, or we're not calling an action. I mean, we are, but it's in an API route, which is separate from the UI route. So yeah, is there a manual way to? Can we funnel the API request through the action on the route we want to revalidate? But then we would be doing a fetch request. Sorry.
We'd be fetching a fetch.
Yeah, that'd be kind of funky, and we would be. I mean, we'd have to send like the ID in a body. We wouldn't be able to do it in the URL because that route that we would be sending to doesn't have a URL parameter. Yeah, do we have a way to revalidate, like trigger revalidation?
Yeah, this is not quite right. This is actually like the opposite of what I'm looking for. I guess by default, Remix will revalidate everything, and you could optimize by saying like, don't revalidate if this happens or if that happens. But we want the opposite. We want it's not revalidating. We want to ask it to do so.
There is a hook called use revalidator. But
Okay,
again, that's going to
but that's a hook, so
that's
it's
yeah, that's a hook. So that's going to be in that route's UI. It's not gonna we yeah, it's not going to be the right thing. So the flow we had before worked because we were using a form and using the action on the proper route. The thing we were trying to get away from was that hidden input to hold the ID because that felt janky. We have definitely a less janky process for getting what we want. We're using that new API route idea that we're talking about, like resource routes. But now we have a revalidation issue.
okay. So
We've
is
kind
it?
of stepped out of the remix flow.
Yeah, are we performing in the dreaded anti pattern now? Maybe. Um. Yeah. Hmm. So this bubbles up, right? Right. Which is why we have to provide an ID. We can't just rely on the params because we're not actually submitting to a specific route.
Now,
Hmm.
maybe this might not have anything to do with it. Maybe it's the solution, and I'm a genius. But Remix allows nested routing. So that means within a page, within our app, excuse me, I've got something hit me wrong. You can do nested routing. So on one page, you can have multiple routes being like triggered and called and viewed. Is it possible to nest this new route we have with that takes in the the parameter, the URL parameter within
Oh,
the
Spencer. Can we not revalidate within our component? And what I mean by that is this is actually it's no, it's a functional component. So could we not call the revalidator here?
uh I guess, yeah, this is just a component file, but it's being used in a route. So does it just revalidate the route it's nested inside of? It's a child of? I
Let's
guess.
see. You find yourself.
Revalidate the data on the page for reasons outside of normal.
Let's try it. So use revalidator. How do we import that? Like this.
React remix run React. Yeah, you got it.
Okay, and this gets called. Pass in anything, do I? No. Okay. And then revalidator dot revalidate. Pretty straightforward. Okay. Well, let's see if this works.
That would be a great solution to just have.
Just a bunch of testing tasks. This is the priority. Okay. Now, if I pop in, hey, look at that.
Man, I love this thing about Remix where they just kind of have an answer for everything. And it's really easy.
Remix. We have an answer for everything.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so yeah, so it must, the revalidation just revalidates whatever route you're currently viewing, right? Whichever one we're on, and you can
I'll
call it
tell
from
you what,
any
Spencer.
nested component. Okay, interesting.
I feel super validated right now.
Oh, wow.
I was
I don't
forgetting that.
know if I feel embarrassed or proud. Like that was
I
pretty good.
think both in equal measure.
That was pretty good. I'll give you that one. That was great.
Okay, so what did we do today? Just to sum it up, we
Nothing that we
essentially
intended to do, but what else
yeah,
did we
nothing
do?
we did. You're totally right. I guess the okay. So, spoiler alert: we were thinking of working on authentication today, and we were talking through this problem because Spencer, you were talking about needing to pass like a fetch call. Is that right for utilizing some of these auth packages that you researched? And we were trying to figure out how that would work because before what we just did we were just utilizing the loader and action on the actual um, route component, and that did not seem like it was going to be uh, a potentially viable solution for utilization with the auth packages, the way that they actually need to make a fetch call. Basically, what we researched today is how do we more specifically fine tune, like if I just want to do just this one thing and not have to complicate the UI component logic, how can I create just an API route? And so that is what we did here today.
Yeah, like really specifically, just trying to figure out how to do, um, how to do some work on the back end that needs to be done on the back end for security reasons, authentication reasons. You need a trusted environment. How do we just set up an action to happen on the back end, and then how do we call it from the front end? And that's what we have here now. So, and that brings us really into like true full stack understanding of at least for me of the framework, because like you have the front end components. Obviously, you got React components that you can put it anywhere you want. That's all pretty familiar. You got the actions and loaders. It's like, okay, cool. So that stuff happens on the back end, but those are tightly coupled to the route file, right? And all of it is that we've done up to this point has been based on using forms to do submissions, because that's something you do so much, is just form submission for all sorts of reasons. And for authentication, we'll have to do that. You'll have some sort of an authentication form, put in some credentials, submit, yada yada. We've got that flow down. But there are also a lot of cases where you need to do some work, like I said, on the back end, but you're not submitting a form. And how does that work? And now we've managed to do it in a couple of different ways now, actually. So we did a button click using on click, using a handler, making a fetch request. Was there another way that we did it, or that's like that's the thing we did? You did your test
The,
originally, but was that just that was in a loader, right? So we could do something on a route load as well. We could do the same thing.
yeah, and also it's worth noting that I do like the fetcher form flow. I mean, it's pretty smooth. You don't have to worry about implementing the logic for refreshing the page and all that.
Right.
This revalidator is honestly not that much extra to 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 add to your code or even to conceive of. But it is nice to not have to call it. Honestly, it's nice to set up a system where it just is handled for you. But now
Right.
I'm glad that we're at least seeing that that's part of what the fetcher does that is so strong. Um,
Hmm.
and it is, I don't mind this so much, the hidden input, but it's also nice to not have to do that. You know, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I'm kind of going back and forth, because I think from a readability standpoint, if somebody else were to jump into our code base, and if prior to us doing anything together, if I came into a code base and I saw a input, but it's hidden, and it's ID, like what is happening here? Why is there a hidden input? Why don't I see it? What's the use? Right? That's just like question marks come up there. However, if we look at, oh, there's a button with an on click, what happens to that handler? Okay, we're hitting endpoint, we're getting a thing, and then I mean, revalidate is a pretty obvious keyword to kind of mention what's going on there. So I think that reads better for maintainability. I agree that we should allow Remix to do its thing like without us micromanaging the process that's already been put in place as much as possible. However, you do run into cases like maybe this is one of those exceptions where how else are we going to do a delete, pass an ID with the component structure and everything we have right now, but still avoid that hidden input, because then we're tied down to the form data paradigm, and doesn't seem to that doesn't match so well with what we're trying to do. This flow matches better.
Yeah, I mean, also looking at the actual action itself, this is a bit less verbose than what we had originally. Not by a ton, but it was. I mean, it is. We're not calling the form data anymore. We don't need to. Um, we can use this more fancy. What do you call it? Way to pass a property value
Hmm.
that has the same name. This is a little easier to read to me than the form data thing, but that's all trivial in a way. I mean, this, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess we would still need form data for this. I don't know. I guess what we'll need to do is figure out specifically what kind of like design we would actually want, because the only criticism I have of what we're doing now is I'm not sure that we need a specific route for deleting. Like, deleting a task only happens in one place, as far as I can tell, which
Mhm.
is on the task component, uh, specifically on this icon button. And I think there's a case to be made for leaving the fetcher form flow in because it just makes a little more sense to integrate with how we're doing things elsewhere. But in terms of just learning how the system works, I really do like understanding. Like, there are going to be cases, especially I think with auth, which hopefully we'll get to next week. Um, there are going to be cases where we're going to need this abstracted route that is just exists as a route,
Mhm.
not as a part of a component that already exists. But we'll see. I suppose we
Yeah.
at least know how.
I guess this is where my ignorance comes in, but when I think about deleting an item, that doesn't sound like a form submission to me. Although
Mm-hmm.
maybe in pre client side everything JavaScript internet world, I guess every user interaction that is supposed to send something to the backend was a form. Like form in my mind is where the user is going to input some data and then submit something, but maybe forms are just meant to like capture any of the CRUD operations, right? Because I mean, a form
Yeah,
in my mind captures every other piece of CRUD operation. Delete is the only one that's sticking out in my mind. Like that's kind of weird to send it through a form, but like creating one, yeah, you're going to put in data and submit. Editing one, you're going to put in new data and submit. Um, reading is just a fetch request, so you're not submitting anything there. You're just pulling something, and then deleting, I guess, kind of falls in with get, where I mean you have a user action that's going to like trigger it, but you're not sending anything along with other than the ID, I suppose. And I guess since you're sending the ID, that would be the information in the form that you send on a delete request. You see
I
what I'm
think there's
saying?
also yeah, there's potentially actually yeah. I'm not sure if this actually hides it the way I'm thinking, but there was a part of me that wondered if sometimes it's smarter to pass the ID in the body of a delete request as opposed to a as a parameter. I
You
don't
could
know
do,
if that
yeah.
actually hides it. I'm not sure it does, but maybe.
Hides it or not, but you could just do that as well instead of using. I'm. Do you, is there like a best practice or is there a guiding philosophy around when you send data in a URL parameter versus sending it in a body on a request?
Mm,
I mean, if you're posting,
sensitivity for one. You wouldn't want to be passing like emails or passwords through URL parameters. But
okay,
aside from that, I think it's just also maybe that it's a little easier to parse the body in the back end than it is to parse multiple different parameters in a URL. But I'm not even sure if that's true
but
anymore.
also,
Yeah,
I mean,
we have so many.
you do submit search parameters via URL parameters, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
you get
yeah,
those
because there's a
really,
get
really
request.
long URLs where it's like question mark ID equals question mark, location equals question mark. You're sending all of your search parameters in through that.
Yeah, well, specifically with a get request, you don't have access to a body. I don't think.
Ah,
Uh,
okay. That's
so
yeah. You're asking for information. Here are my parameters. You send them in the URL because GET requests don't have bodies. Okay, yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good
I
point.
was I ran into this a little while ago. I had a side project where I was building a stat tracking app for this game I like called Brawlhalla, and I had access to their API because I wrote to them and they provided me a key.
Nice.
But the wrinkle is that you could only perform GET requests to their API, and you had to pass the API key in the URL search params
Mm,
as like um, as a yeah a search parameter. And I ended up building a separate backend just to handle that call, so that it wouldn't be exposed in the front end call.
mm,
Little did I know at that time that in Next you could just make that call from a server component
hmm
and completely hide the API key. Um, so I built this whole Flask backend just to handle that, and then you and I had just started working in Next, and I realized, oh man, I could just do this from here, and it's not it's not exposed to the user at least or the client. I mean,
okay. Yeah. And now we
Good to
can do
know,
that
though, for the
here in
future.
Remix too. Yeah. Okay.
That's right.
This really fleshes out, like I said, my understanding of like the full stack nature of Remix, and the idea that you really could just design an entire API inside of this, and then, I mean, you could, I guess technically you could even do away with like actions entirely inside of your Remix component file. Not that you would, but you could, and you could just make fetch requests to an API that you outline.
That's right. I'm curious what the advantages and disadvantages of that would be. If there's any performance hit or anything like that. Something to explore in the future, I suppose.
I think a big part of it is just the co-location of data, of code. I mean, so
Mm,
having, just for readability and organization of having your component, your action, your loader all in one file, instead of just making like you have your component and then a fetch request to some other file somewhere. Um, I mean, it works with again with the forms. It works beautifully. It's very efficient. It's
works
all right
amazingly.
there in the same file. Um, kind of again, kind of akin to my idea of one of the reasons I really like Tailwind is that I can just stay in one file and work here. I don't have to be popping back and forth between my component file and my style sheet to be able to see both. Like it's all just there.
I like that too. I think there's a case to be made for some of these calls to our database to just stay in the actual component. I know we were talking about like on the actual to do route in that loader. We should probably just pull the tasks from that loader. There's no real reason to abstract that to its own API route that we call.
No,
It works
I
well enough, and that's not logic that changes, right?
no, I will absolutely be favoring like the loader action component
Mm.
framework. That's the way obviously that's the way Remix has been designed to work, and it works really well. But I just wanted to know, for those times, for those exceptions of like when you need to just interact with an API call that is separate from that outline. How do we do that? And now we know. So that's fantastic.
Well, a successful day,
I
like
think
many,
so. Very nicely done. Nice piloting. Very good job.
of course.
All right. Well, I think that's probably where we're gonna call it for today. Thanks for everybody for joining us on our journey here, and hopefully y'all learned something too. And maybe we'll get on to some authentication next week.
We're totally going to do that.
Sounds good. All right. Cool.
Okay.
Well, thanks everybody, and we're gonna sign off for
Have
now.
a good weekend, y'all.
Have a good weekend. And I'll also end our stream here.